Hello and welcome to Sincerely Elvis Presley. I'm Sean. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by, and if you're not, thanks for returning. It's much appreciated. Today I want to look at a couple of books by J.A.T, which focus on the artwork of Elvis's albums and also of his tapes. And I thought to myself, if we're going to be looking at Elvis's artwork, what better place to start than by reflecting on the album that started it all, Elvis Presley. This is an image that's been part of public consciousness now for some 68 years, and it's really easy to overlook just how impactful it must have been at the time. In interviews about Baz Luhrmann's movie, Austin Butler said that he felt Elvis had become almost cultural wallpaper, something that was so omnipresent in the background that he was easy to forget and overlook. I think the same can be true of this album. It's just something that's always been there. But take a moment just to put yourself in the shoes of the record buying public in 1956, walking into stores and seeing that image staring at them from the shelves. Must have blown their minds. There'd been nothing like that before. It was pretty much as revolutionary as the music that the album itself contained. I mean, bold and audacious move by RCA. Tick. They could quite easily have gone with any head and shoulders shot of Elvis, and I'm pretty sure his looks alone would have sold the product. But no, they wanted something that announced in neon letters, "Hey, I've arrived, and you're not going to ignore me." So they went back to a live shot from Tampa, Florida from July 1955, Elvis in full flow, full attack. And then they made that black and white and went with that lurid pink and green lettering. It was like nothing else anyone had seen. It was punk rock 20 years before punk rock. Little wonder then that The Clash decided to pay homage to the cover 23 years later with 1979's London Calling. See, I'm going to make a case right here, right now. That is the most iconic album cover of all time. Let me know what you think in the comments. Anyway, on to the books that we're going to talk about. So, Joseph A. Tunzi, J.A.T. Productions out of Chicago, Illinois. Joe's been producing Elvis books now since the 80s, and he was one of the first authors to concentrate on specific topics. So rather than an Elvis biography that started with his birth, early years, early recordings, etc., 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 Joe's books tend to focus on specifics. So you'll have a specific set of concerts, a particular movie, be it what you will, they're very, very specific in their subject matter. And two books which celebrated the 20th anniversary of J.A.T. Productions dipped their toe in the water of looking at images of Elvis and how they were used in the album art. So the first of those books was Elvis Portraits. And certain shots that were used also outlined the releases that particular shot was utilised on. So this one is the back cover of the How Great Thou Art album. One of the photographs used on the back cover of the Paradise Hawaiian Style soundtrack. And as you can, not every page does that by any means at all, but just the odd one or two. Shows you the picture and shows you how it's used. Here it was the Clean Up Your Own Backyard single. So Portraits started that, and the same year Joe produced Elvis Concerts. There really is quite a horrible glare on that, I apologise. And this was a book gathering together lots of different photographs of Elvis throughout the concert years. And every now and then it picked out shots that were used for albums. There we have the Today album. So again, like the Portraits book, every now and again you do get an idea of particular photographs and how they were utilised for Elvis releases. Taking things one step further was this particular release, the definitive vinyl artwork of Elvis Presley, 1956 to 1977. Now, so far in my videos I've been featuring books that are hard to get hold of, and I do apologise because this one is probably the worst of the lot in terms of getting hold of. I don't know whether this had a particularly small print run, quite why it didn't or doesn't seem to have the distribution that other titles have, because you can still get hold of a lot of J.A.T books relatively easy. But this one, I've seen this appear on eBay in the last 3 years, probably as about 3 times. It just, for some reason, it doesn't turn up. Have a quick look at when we were talking about. So 2015 this was produced, so getting on for 10 years. Yeah, I've no real understanding of quite why it's so hard to get hold of, unless anyone knows different, and if you do, please let me know in the comments. But as far as I'm aware, this one is a bit like the Holy Grail in terms of Tunzi's books. And it really is a little treasure trove. It starts in 1956, as the cover said, and you get to see pretty much every release and the photograph that informed that release, pictures that were used. You get to see images that were reversed, how they were cropped, the full image itself and how it was cropped for the release. Goes through all the singles first. E.P.s and how the imagery was utilised in E.P.s. There we go. There's an example of a reversed shot. So, Love Me Tender, and you can see on that particular release the photo's reversed. Looks like they've done some work to the colour on it as well. And then we move on to albums. And the album I was just referencing, and there's the full photograph that was used on it. And what's great is you get to see all the various little elements that went into the album covers, but then you get to see the anomalies. So Harem Scarum, another one that was reversed. And actually on the other page there's the Frankie and Johnny cover. Now this is an interesting one because it just goes to show that sort of having a dig at people's body image and that kind of thing is no new phenomenon, because when Frankie and Johnny was released, in their infinite wisdom, the record company decided that Elvis's face looked a little bit too puffy, a little bit too podgy. So basically they took an entirely different photograph and stuck his head on it. It was basically cut and paste work in 1965. Now I've heard some people mistakenly assume that the head that was used on the body was actually just reusing the Girl Happy cover, but that isn't strictly correct, because if you look at where the eyes are, you can see that it was the shot below. Now that shot below was probably from the Girl Happy sessions, but it isn't actually the same shot that was used on the Girl Happy cover, because you can see the eyes are off to one side there. And they aren't there. But this wasn't the only example of this. As many of you may know, Paradise Hawaiian style. The same thing happened. They decided that Elvis didn't look in the greatest of shape in the photographs from the movie, so they went back to Fun in Acapulco from a couple of years previous. Beggars belief, really, doesn't it? There we go. Some more examples of the full photographs and how they were cropped for use on the releases. And this goes through all the albums till you get towards the last ones. And then we get some interesting mock-ups of how the artwork was originally conceived, bits and pieces that we used. Absolutely fascinating. Cracking little release. I'm glad I can share it because, as I say, I'm not entirely sure that if you watch this and you think, oh, I'd like to get my hands on a copy, I'm not sure how successful you'll be. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's really easy to get hold of, but I'm not convinced. It took me some time to track it down. That might say more about how rubbish I am at looking for things. I don't know, but yeah, it seems to be a bit of a hard one. This get all sorts of notes from executives at RCA about how the imagery was going to be used, what was going to be used, etc. It's yeah, nice little book. And then a couple of years ago, it was followed up with a sequel, if you like. The glares on this is even worse, I do apologise. And this is the US artwork guide to Elvis Presley's tapes. Now this one is still available. It's not such a hefty volume, and I never really understand why, when you've got an author releasing particular books, some will be in hardback and then others will be in softback. I don't know what the decision-making process there is. I'm always a bit disappointed when they're softback. I do like something that's going to last. But yeah, this is still available. You can still find it on Elvis dealers. It's going to set you back about £60 though. And it's an interesting book, but is it worth £60? I'm not convinced. Obviously that's entirely up to you if you decide it's something you want to purchase, but I think that's a lot for this. Anyway, Elvis's tapes. That's the kind of thing we're getting. Fascinating, don't get me wrong. Goes into 8 tracks. But when you think about it, although it's nice to have a record of, you know, especially for completists, of all the tapes, once you've got that book and you've seen the artwork in its, you know, original form, and then how it was applied to the releases, you know, really, other than, you know, the odd graphical changes to fit them on tapes, you're not really getting anything different. This to me is interesting, but in no way as essential as the previous volume. But I thought it worth sharing, and I believe at some point this year a 3rd volume is due to land, and that's going to look at the rear covers of the albums and singles, etc., etc. And the artwork, that was the photographs that were used in the artwork of those. So that'll be fascinating, and I hope it's a it's a little bit more substantial than this one, because as I say, it's a bit thin, 96 pages, and a bit flimsy. So I'm not entirely sure I'd give that a hearty recommendation, but I would the first volume. So there you have it, a quick look at the vinyl artwork of Elvis Presley. I hope you found it enjoyable, and if you did, I hope that you'll consider clicking on the like button. If you want to see more, maybe you'll consider subscribing. Next time, we're going to be having a Sun Showdown. Till then, take care. Ta-da.
We'll meet you again. May God bless you. Adios.